Could a Six Nations game be held in the Southern Hemisphere? Now, this has got me thinking as later this year, South Africa versus Argentina is due to be staged at Twickenham, which wouldn't be the first time a rugby championship game has been hosted at Twickenham, with Australia facing Argentina at the same stadium back in 2016. And you'd have to go back even further to 2011, I think it was, where a Super Rugby match took place at Twickenham with Crusaders facing Sharks. Now, could this happen in the Six Nations? For me, I believe it's a good idea that an entirely new fan base would get to experience the Six Nations. Like, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with hosting a Six Nations game in its traditional nations, but what if a new fan base experienced the Six Nations? Like, for instance, who wouldn't like to watch an England versus France in New Zealand, or an Ireland versus Wales in South Africa, or Scotland versus Italy in Australia? Like, many fans would like to experience the Six Nations in an entirely different country, like how Northern Hemisphere fans are experiencing the Rugby Championship. Now, I know what you're saying. Isn't there the Rugby World Cup for that? Yes. But we're not talking about Rugby World Cup. We're talking about the Six Nations being held in the Southern Hemisphere. So, what are the pros of a Six Nations game being held in either Australia, South Africa, or New Zealand, or maybe even Argentina? Well, we've got to look at the logistics of it. Can this realistically happen? Yes, but in what country could a Six Nations game potentially happen in the Southern Hemisphere? Now, thinking about it, for me, it's got to be South Africa, with the reasoning being is time zone. Now, forgive my geography, I am not very good at geography, so I'm just going to put this out there. What's the capital of South Africa, please? I just need help. But anyway, South Africa has a similar time zone to Western Europe. So for me, that would be the ideal country to host a Six Nations game. But the issue with hosting a Six Nations game in the Southern Hemisphere is travel. Now, that's another problem, but I suppose it works in the URC, where South African clubs have to travel to play a Munster or an Edinburgh or a Bennington or a Cardiff Blues even, or when one team from Ireland, Scotland, Wales, in Italy have to travel to South Africa to play a game. Now, the reason why I haven't picked either Australia or New Zealand as potential hosts for a Six Nations game is time. Like, if you're watching the Rugby Championship, like, the average kickoff time in Australia or New Zealand would be about 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, which is just bizarre for Six Nations fans. Like, I don't think a lot of Six Nations fans would like to watch a game which kicks off at 11 o'clock in the morning. I mean, some fans would, but other fans wouldn't. But and it's one of the reasons why, for me, I've had South Africa in mind as the perfect destination to host a Six Nations game. But that's what that's for me now. So I'd like to pose a question to you. If the Six Nations was to host a game in the Southern Hemisphere, which country, which match, and why? So that's part one done. Could the Six Nations be held in a single country? Now, I think about this, given that last year's Under-20 Rugby Championship was held in Australia. So I was wondering whether it could be the same for the Six Nations. Now, could this happen? Well, in the Six Nations, 3 games are staged per weekend. But let's say, for instance, England held 3 matches on weekend. Where could those matches take place? Now, Wembley and Twickenham are key areas, but what about a third stadium, maybe Olympic Stadium or Old Trafford? Staging a Union game at Old Trafford will seem a bit weird because that's where Rugby League is usually held. But it could happen, though realistically, only in 2 to 3 countries could that happen. So staging the Six Nations in a single country at the moment isn't feasible, but it's interesting to look into nonetheless. But here's the thing. What if games weren't staged in just one country, but rather 3 countries per year on a rotational basis? So, for instance, one year, England, Scotland, and Wales can host matches, and then the next year, Italy, France, Ireland could host matches. Now, is that more feasible than a single country hosting a match? Well, of course, some nations would be happy to see, say, a Wales versus England game take place in France, or an Ireland versus Italy game take place in Scotland, but this reduces travel. But what are your thoughts on this? Could a Six Nations game take place? Not a Six Nations game, but the entire tournament as a whole. So could the Six Nations take place in just 1, 2, or 3 countries per year? And if so, how do you go about ensuring each game is hosted at a specific stadium successfully? Right, relegation. Now, relegation from the Six Nations has been a hot topic for the last, honestly, I don't know how many years. I mean, and the reason for it's hot, and the reason why relegation is a hot topic is because we've seen the likes of Georgia knocking on the door of the Six Nations for the last few years, given their improvement, and also Italy haven't been, I don't know how to say it, they've been okay, but coming into the modern world, Italy have got to be better than doing just okay. Now, we've seen Italy rise slowly ever since their debut back in 2000, but questions have got to be asked, or rather, questions are asked of Italy's status in the Six Nations, given that they haven't finished higher than 4th, which was 2013. Now, we say that Italy have been improving, but there seems to be very little improvement in Italian rugby. Like, and I think to myself, we always say that Italy have a young, exciting squad coming up, but we've been saying that for the last 10 years, and they've barely done anything. And also, I looked to their Rugby World Cup performances. Now, looking at their 2023 performance, they lost heavily to France and New Zealand. So it's got me thinking whether Italy really are a tier one nation, which is harsh of me to ask, especially as they've taken some massive scalps in recent years. But when it comes to the Six Nations, they're often finishing fifth and sixth. Never before have they made a real push to win the title. And of course, they can only play what's in front of them. I mean, the likes of Ireland, France, and England, and Scotland, they're also improving year on year, which is making the task for Italy that bit harder. But that's the point. But looking at Italy, you've just got to ask yourself, when will they finally make a push to win Six Nations? And I'm aware I have now deviated a bit, so I'll now go back to the topic at hand, which is relegation. Now, would relegation from the Six Nations make the tournament better? Well, there are arguments for and against this, with some saying that relegation from the Six Nations will make the team that finishes that makes a team who's at threat of finishing bottom play even better, because then there's repercussions for finishing bottom, and as for the team who wins promotion, they will get to play some of the best sides, including England, Ireland, and France. Now, imagine if there was promotion from the second division of the Six Nations. Like, imagine seeing the likes of Georgia and Romania or Spain or Portugal playing the big teams. Like, imagine the new fans rugby will have if promotion and relegation to and from the Six Nations wasn't commonplace. But that's all for me now. But what do you think? Is relegation from the Six Nations and promotion to the Six Nations a good idea or not? How would promotion and relegation benefit the Six Nations, if at all it does? So, let's know your thoughts.